The galaxy was ancient. Civilizations had risen and fallen for millions of years, leaving behind ruins, myths, and scars across the stars. But in the age of the Galactic Council, wars had grown rare. For thousands of years, disputes were solved, not with fire but with endless debate, treaties, and negotiations. The Council called this order peace eternal, and most of the galaxy believed in it. To the Council, peace meant stability, peace meant control, and control always belonged to the elder species, the ones who had ruled for millennia. Younger species were expected to obey, to wait, to remain silent until the elders decided they were ready to speak. And then came humanity. Humanity was a newborn compared to the others, rising from a small blue planet at the edge of a spiral arm. They had only reached the stars a few centuries ago, but their speed of growth shocked everyone. Their colonies spread across empty systems. Their ships traveled farther than expected. Their stubborn voices echoed in every chamber they entered. At first, the Council tolerated them. They were amusing, almost entertaining. The humans came with bold demands, fair treatment for their colonies, protection from raiders, and equal rights among the Council races. They spoke of freedom as if it was a birthright, not a privilege. But the elders laughed. "You are too young," the Seraphin elder declared during one of the first human petitions. His voice was heavy with age and authority. "Your kind must prove itself worthy of trust before it is given responsibility. Be patient. Time will decide your fate." Patience. That was the word they always used. But patience had already cost humanity too much. When human traders were ambushed on Council-controlled routes, the Council promised investigations. When human colonies were harassed by raiders, the Council promised deliberations. When entire families cried out for protection, the Council answered with silence. The humans grew bitter. They had believed the Council's promises, believed in the dream of galactic unity. But the dream was broken. Ambassador Sarah Calder was the one who carried humanity's voice in those days. She stood alone among towering alien figures, her human frame dwarfed by the massive chamber of the Council. Her eyes carried the sorrow of her people, but also the fire of their anger. In one session, she raised her voice with trembling hands. "We are not children. We are not pets. We are a people with dignity, and we demand to be heard." The Council's response was laughter. Not cruel, not loud, but the kind of quiet chuckle that stripped dignity from her words. The kind of laughter that dismissed humanity as nothing more than impatient children. That day, Sarah Calder left the chamber with her head held high. But deep inside, her heart burned with shame and fury. The Council thought the matter was over. They believed humans would eventually grow quiet, bow their heads, and accept their place at the bottom of the Great Order. That was the way it had always been. The weak obeyed, the strong ruled, and the galaxy remained peaceful. But in the hidden places of space, far from Council eyes, humanity whispered to itself. In shipyards, orbiting barren moons, in underground, bunkers beneath their colonies, in secret meetings where anger replaced fear, they spoke words that shook with determination. "We will not be ignored." The words spread like fire, carried from one human world to another. Soldiers whispered it as they trained. Engineers whispered it as they built. Mothers whispered it to their children so that they would grow up knowing the truth. It was not yet war. It was not yet rebellion. But it was the spark, and sparks in the silence of space can grow into flames that no empire can contain. The Council had laughed, but the galaxy would soon learn. Humanity was done waiting. The spark of anger in humanity soon became a storm. It began at the edge of the Orion sector, where two human colonies thrived on rich soil and bright skies. Farmers grew crops that could feed millions, children laughed under the light of twin suns, and traders carried goods across nearby systems. Life was simple, fragile, and beautiful. Then the Zelthar Dominion came. The Zelthar were one of the elder races, proud members of the Galactic Council. Their fleets were vast, their claws sharp, their history soaked in conquest. When they saw the human colonies, they saw weakness and profit. With cold precision, Their warships descended. Villages burned. Families were captured. Thousands of humans were chained and carried away as slaves. News of the attack spread like wildfire, across Earth, across Mars, across every colony. Grief turned into rage. Mothers wept for their stolen children. Fathers cursed the stars. Soldiers begged for orders to march, but the leaders of humanity knew they had to try one last time. To plead before the council, Ambassador Sarah Calder returned to the Galactic chamber. Her steps echoed in the grand hall, where towering figures of countless species looked down at her. Her eyes were heavy with sorrow, but her voice carried strength. "My people are dying," she said. "Our colonies are burning. The Zelthar have taken our families, our children, our future. We come here not as beggars, but as equals. We demand their release. We demand justice." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Some council members shifted uneasily, but none dared to speak. Finally, the Seraphim elder, with his voice deep and commanding, replied, "War is forbidden. Violence is forbidden. If we allow one spark, the galaxy will burn again. Negotiations will be held in time." Sarah's fists clenched. In time? Every second our people suffer in chains. Every second lives are broken. How can you call this peace when it is only peace for the powerful? The elder's tone grew colder. "Your kind is too young to understand. You will wait. This is the law of the council." Sarah's voice cracked with fury. "No, we will not wait. If you will not act, then humanity will." Gasps filled the chamber. Whispers spread among the alien delegates. And then, like poison, came the sound that would haunt her forever. Laughter. It began with the Zelthar delegate, his sharp teeth glinting in the light. "Empty threats," he hissed. "Humans are loud but weak. They bark like animals, but they cannot bite." The laughter spread. Council members chuckled, some politely, some cruelly. To them, humanity's anger was a performance, nothing more than a child throwing a tantrum. Sarah stood frozen, her face pale, her hands trembling. Every laugh was a blade cutting into her heart. She had come with hope, with faith that the council would see reason. Instead, they mocked her people's pain. At last she raised her head high. Her voice, steady but broken, rang out across the chamber. "You call this peace, but it is not peace. It is silence forced upon the weak. You will remember this moment. You will remember that when humanity cried for help, you gave us laughter. And when we return, it will not be with pleas. It will be with fire." The chamber fell silent. For the first time, fear flickered in a few alien eyes. But most still believed it was nothing more than human arrogance. They thought she was bluffing. Sarah Calder left the chamber without another word. Her heart was heavy, her eyes filled with unshed tears, but her spirit did not break. Outside, messages flooded her ship from Earth. Messages of fury, of pain, of resolve. The people were ready, and far away in the shadows of forgotten star systems, hidden shipyards began to awaken. Sparks of light flickered against black skies as humanity built in silence, preparing for the day when words would no longer matter. The council had turned their backs. The Zelthar had laughed. But deep within every human heart, a single vow echoed: never again. The council chambers stood as one of the grandest wonders of the galaxy. Its walls of crystal shimmered with starlight, and its floor was carved from the stones of 100 worlds. For ages, it had been the place of balance, where disputes ended not in blood, but in words. Here the elders believed they kept the galaxy safe from chaos. But now, whispers of humanity spread through those glittering halls like shadows. "They are restless," said a Larathi delegate, his long tendrils twitching. "Their ambassador threatens war." "War?" scoffed a Seraphim noble. "Humans cannot wage war against the council. Their fleets are small, their weapons crude. It is nothing more than noise." The words echoed again and again. Noise, bluff, children, impatience. That was how the council saw humanity. Even as reports came of hidden activity in human space, shipyards expanding, strange convoys moving through uncharted sectors, the council only shook their heads. They bark like wild animals, one delegate laughed. Let them bark. They cannot bite. The Zelthar, sitting proudly among them, sneered with cruel confidence. We hold their colonies in chains. If they were strong, they would have acted already. Their ambassadors' threats are hollow. I know humans well. They scream when beaten, but they always bow. The chamber filled with amusement. The laughter of the powerful rolled like thunder against the quiet pain of the weak. To them, humanity's anger was not a warning, but entertainment. But not all in the chamber laughed. A few voices, quiet and uncertain, whispered doubts. The Yuran, a species of pale scholars, spoke softly. The humans. They are different. They do not yield easily. Perhaps their threats should be heard with caution. Yet the elder races silenced them with scorn. The Seraphin elder raised his long arms and declared, The law is clear. No war shall be waged. If humanity dares to break the law, they will face the wrath of all the council combined. They know this, and in that silence something new began to grow. Not fear alone, but respect. The Zelthar dominion had fallen. Their fleets were broken, their chains shattered, their prisoners freed. The galaxy watched in silence, unable to believe what had happened. For the first time in ages, a young species had struck against an elder power and won. The council tried to regain control. They called emergency meetings, issued threats, and promised punishment. But their words were weaker now. The illusion of their eternal peace had already cracked, and the galaxy had seen the truth. Across distant worlds, whispers began to spread. On the mining moons of the Thal, workers who had long suffered under cruel masters spoke in secret. If humans can fight, they whispered, perhaps we can too. On the frozen colonies of the Vela, people lit fires in the night and prayed to the stars, hoping the human fleet would come for them next. For the first time, the weak felt hope. For the first time, the mighty felt fear. On the bridge of the Iron Resolve, Admiral Elias Reyes looked out at the endless stars. His crew was exhausted, their ships scarred from battle, but their spirit burned stronger than ever. Reports came from every corner of human space. Volunteers pouring into the military, engineers working day and night, families giving everything to the cause. Humanity was no longer just defending itself. It was leading a movement. One of his officers approached quietly. Admiral, the galaxy is watching us. Some fear us, others beg for our aid. What do we tell them? Reyes turned, his face lit by the glow of the stars. His voice was calm but fierce. Tell them the truth. We fight not to conquer. We fight so no one will ever be ignored again. If they wish to rise, let them rise. If they wish to join us, let them stand by our side. But if they stand in our way, we will not hesitate. The officer nodded, her eyes filled with determination. Around them, the crew listened in silence. Every word felt like a promise carved into the stars themselves. On alien worlds, the sight of humanity's fleet became a symbol. When human warships appeared above planets where prisoners were held, crowds cheered. When human marines stormed enemy strongholds, slaves wept with joy. The humans fought like warriors, but they carried themselves like liberators. The council sent warnings. They called humanity reckless, dangerous, a threat to galactic order. But their words no longer carried the same weight. Too many had seen the truth. Too many had felt the fire, and among the humans themselves, the vow spread like blood through veins. Never again shall we be ignored. Never again shall our cries be met with silence. Admiral Reyes walked the decks of his flagship, passing soldiers who saluted him with weary but proud faces. He stopped by a young Marine, barely more than a boy, sitting on the floor with his helmet in his hands. Are you afraid? The Admiral asked softly. The boy looked up, his eyes wide but steady. Yes, sir, but I'm more afraid of doing nothing. If we don't fight, then who will? Reyes placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. That is why we fight, not because we love war, but because someone must stand when all others fall silent. Those words spread through the fleet like wildfire, carried from ship to ship, soldier to soldier. They became a quiet chant, whispered before every battle. If the galaxy will not hear our voice, it will hear our roar. The Council tried to call it rebellion. The elder races tried to call it madness, but in truth it was something greater. It was the awakening of a people who refused to bow. And as the human fleet prepared for its next campaign, the galaxy trembled. For the fire of humanity was no longer a spark. It was an inferno spreading beyond control, and no amount of silence could put it out. The war had burned across the stars. The Zelthar dominion was no more. Chains that had bound thousands were shattered, their prisons left in ruins. Humanity stood victorious, but the galaxy was not the same. The Council, once untouchable, had been humbled. In the grand chamber, silence filled the air as the delegates gathered. The crystal walls no longer gleamed with pride. They seemed to tremble, as if ashamed. Seats that had once laughed at humanity now sat in uneasy quiet. For the first time in centuries, the Council feared. Sarah Calder entered the chamber not as a beggar, not as a voice ignored, but as the representative of a species that had changed the galaxy. She walked with steady steps, her gaze strong, her presence undeniable. This time no one dared laugh. The Seraphin elder rose slowly. His voice, once filled with arrogance, was now heavy with defeat. Humanity. You have shaken the very foundation of the Council. You have broken the sacred law, but you have also shown us something we did not wish to see. We cannot return to what was before. Sarah's voice was calm but sharp, carrying the weight of every human who had suffered. We asked for justice, and you gave us silence. We asked for peace, and you gave us chains. We warned you, and you laughed. Humanity did not want this war, but we will never allow silence to be called peace again. The chamber murmured, some in shame, others in agreement. The words cut deep. Sarah stepped closer, her voice rising. If the Council is to survive, it must change. No more will the weak be ignored. No more will peace be a cage. Every voice must matter. Every cry must be heard, or else your so-called peace will shatter again. And next time, it will not be only humanity who rises. Her words echoed in the silence. Even the proudest delegates lowered their eyes. At that moment, the Council shifted. For the first time, they listened not because they wished to, but because they had no choice. The laws were rewritten. New seats were given to younger races. The voices of the forgotten were carried into the chamber. The illusion of eternal peace was gone, but from its ruins, a new kind of peace began to grow. And at its heart stood humanity. Back aboard the Iron Resolve, Admiral Reyes stood on the deck, looking out at the stars. His fleet was scarred, his people weary, but there was a sense of something greater than victory. The galaxy had seen their fire. It had heard their roar. One of his officers approached him quietly. Admiral, we have won. But what now? Reyes did not smile. His voice was calm, thoughtful. Now we build. We show the galaxy that our strength is not only in war, but in justice. We will fight when we must, but we will also protect. That is what it means to be human. The officer nodded, hope shining in her eyes. Around them, the crew carried on with quiet pride. They were no longer just soldiers of Earth. They were the symbol of change for an entire galaxy. On distant worlds, freed slaves spoke the name of humanity with gratitude. Colonies once abandoned now dreamed again. And among the elder species, respect replaced laughter. Humanity had arrived, not as children, not as beggars, but as equals. The galaxy would never forget the day when the Council thought humanity was bluffing. They would never forget the day humans shattered their false peace. But most of all, they would never forget what rose from the fire. A new dawn. A peace not of silence, but of voices. A peace carried by the roar of humanity.